Well, good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, my lovely students. Boy, we're really working our way through this class. There's not much left. And you might wonder sometimes, when does Mr. Sturtevant make these recordings? And, it depends, but often I make them on Sundays, Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. And right now it's early November. It's 51 degrees outside. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Just got done watching an NFL football game. I'm here in my room. There's nobody in the school, which is really pretty cool. There's not a cloud in the sky. All the leaves have fallen off the trees. So I'm looking at gray sticks and blue skies right now. It's really pretty spectacular out. So it's a perfect time to do this lecture on a really interesting topic. We're delving into Buddhism. We only have 2 lectures on Buddhism, so it's a rather short topic, but you only have 1 test left. We got to talk about this, the Mesoamerica, and then it's time to close up shop for History 1181. So let's get started. Okay, we have 3 big essential questions for this lecture. Number 1 is, what were the basic threats to Hinduism? See, we're going to go back to India and talk about Hinduism. Hallelujah. Who's this character called the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama? Who is this guy? Now, I want you to understand something right out of the chutes. We're going to talk about him just on a basic level today. And then we're going to watch this video on Siddhartha Gautama that is epic. Epic. Absolutely love it. And then how did Buddhism evolve after Siddhartha Gautama's death? And not unlike Christianity, it was pretty pedestrian during his life, but then exploded after his death. Now, I just have to share these 2 remarkable cartoons with you. I just love them. Okay, the first one. This is what Buddhism is not. And you have these guys around the campfire, and this one dude or woman, or I don't know, says, "Oh yeah, first to reach enlightenment right here, people. Woo, baby, eat my dust, ladies." Well, that's not what Buddhism is all about. I love this comic. And then this one's good too. You got these 2 Buddhist dudes, they're sitting around just reminiscing about old photographs. And the one says, "This is when I was a fruit fly in Istanbul. Of course, we called it Constantinople back then. That was by far my shortest life. And here's when in the monarch butterfly migration of 1884, a sparrow ate me, I think." Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, time to get serious. Let's go back to the wonderful place called India. And we left India about 600 BCE. And just to put you back in the right frame of mind, here's the Ganges River. This is probably Benares, the place where people go and die, have their ashes spread into the Ganges River. What an amazing, amazing place India is and was. Now, one thing about 600 BCE India was it was dominated by Brahminical Hinduism. And just to refresh your memory, this is Hinduism that is dominated by the Brahmin caste. They called the shots. They schnookered everybody to a certain extent. They got everyone to buy into this whole concept of the caste system and reincarnation, and society functioned with them on top, and they were the guiding force. Absolutely. I like this intense-looking Brahmin sitting there staring you down, baby. Looks good. But certain Indians did not fit in. They sought a more personal and direct religious experience. They didn't like all the rituals involved in Hinduism. They didn't like the caste system. They didn't think it was fair. I mean, Westerners, we look at the caste system and think it's grossly unfair. There were many people like that in India. And many of these people withdrew from society and became this very important concept. They became ascetics. Now, if you're an ascetic, if you practice asceticism, you isolate yourself in nature. You disregard your bodily needs. You contemplate the meaning of life, and you seek enlightenment. Now, this is interesting. When I look at a person like this, as a Westerner, I tend to look at that person with disdain. Like, you lazy bum, make something out of yourself. In India, these people are held with great reverence. So this character right here might be someone who's more intelligent than any of us, who's more responsible than any of us, who is practicing incredible discipline by denying his basic bodily needs. So when you run across a character like this in Indian history, it's someone to be revered, not someone to be despised. Basic perception difference between the West and the East. All right, now let's get specific. Hinduism has all these rituals, has this big caste system. Well, there's going to be some significant challenges to Hinduism. One from this very obscure religion that you may or may not have ever heard of called Jainism. And the other, of course, is going to be from the large religion that almost everyone has heard of called Buddhism. Let's go to the Jains first. Now, I look at this image of Jainism and I am terrified. Because right here you have good old Adolf Hitler's swastika sitting there. It just goes to show you how obsessed Hitler was with the Indian subcontinent. What's up with that, man? So, when I look at the swastika, I have a hard time getting over World War II and Nazis and the Holocaust. But to Jains, the swastika is this wonderful symbol. And it symbolizes the soul. And the four arms represent really awesome things. They represent infinite knowledge, infinite perception, infinite happiness, and infinite energy. So this apparently is what your soul experiences when it transcends the material existence we all have. Down here, this hand with the wheel on it represents the amazing Hindu concept of ahimsa, which I'm going to explain here very soon. But these are the symbols of Jainism. This really interesting, obscure faith in India that has tremendous impact. And yes, we have a Jainist temple here in Delaware County. I have never been there. It's on Old State Road, Lewis Center. It's not far from here at all. I've driven by it many times. I don't think they have any swastikas on their sign. I don't think that would fly too well. But I am going to go to the Jainist temple at some point. If any of you want to go to the Jainist temple, go and tell me about it. I don't think that you need to go there if you just came from McDonald's. Don't go in there with a McDonald's bag or eating a ham sandwich or wearing leather. I mean, that would be pretty obnoxious. But I guarantee you would find some incredibly gentle people in the Jainist temple. All right, now, this is an interesting image. Jains trace their lineage back to a mythical, perhaps, character called Mahavira, who lived probably sometime, in the 500s BCE, the same time as Siddhartha Gautama, as we're going to learn. But what's interesting about this guy is, like many of these guys, no one knows that he actually existed. What I find interesting about this picture is he seems to be meditating under a tree, which is a powerful religious image in India. You're going to see that Siddhartha Gautama was doing the same thing. Many people think that there were 24 prophets dating all the way back to 900 BCE, and that Mahavira might have been the last one, or maybe a mixture of all of them put together. But he is the person who we credit with the Jainist faith. And there are three basic principles in Jainism that have migrated to Hinduism and Buddhism and are incredibly important. And the first one is the concept of ahimsa, or nonviolence. Jainism defines violence as intentional or unintentional harm. Jains extend the practice of nonviolence toward all living beings. The Jain diet is one of the most rigorous forms of spiritually motivated diet found either on the Indian subcontinent or anywhere. Jain scholars and activists support the concept of veganism. And if you're a vegan, you don't eat eggs, you don't eat butter, you don't drink milk, because you look at that as terribly exploitative of those animals. No hunting for sport, no hunting for that matter, unless you're practicing self-defense. So they're very similar about this. They're very serious about this concept of ahimsa. It is the basis of their religion. That's number one. Number two is this. This is a wonderful, wonderful image. It's called Anekantavada. Anekantavada. And I've got this really cool image of these guys that are blindfolded that seem to be frisking this elephant. So I need to do some explanation here. This is non-absolutism. It refers to the principles of pluralism and multiplicity of viewpoints, and to the notion that truth and reality are perceived differently from diverse points of view, no single one of which is complete. And this is so wonderful. This is an old Jainist proverb. Apparently these 5 blinded individuals, in this case they're just blindfolded, were walking together down a road when they stumbled upon this big mass. Now the first character, he starts to feel the elephant's trunk and says, "We have a long pipe for carrying water." The next starts to feel the elephant's ear and says, "This is a massive, massive palm tree." The next feels the elephant's large front leg and says, "I have a tree trunk." The other feels the broad back and says, "I'm feeling a wall." And the last feels the flexible tail and says, "I have a rope." Now, a Jainist monk stumbles by and calls out to them, "You are all absolutely correct." In other words, from this character's perspective here, he is feeling a broad wall. From this character's perspective here, he is feeling a large palm leaf. His perception is accurate. His perception is accurate. But they have no concept that this is a massive organism made up of different parts. Jainists would look at world religions the same way. They would look at a Christian and say, "You're absolutely right. You have it exactly right. What you're perceiving is accurate." They would look at a Muslim and say, "You're absolutely right. What you're perceiving is accurate." But obviously there's a larger organism that that person might not be able to perceive. But this Jain would have incredible compassion for them. Very interesting. And then this one is just as fascinating. It is pronounced aparigraha. Aparigraha. And what this means is non-possessiveness. Aparigraha is the Sanskrit word for greedlessness or non-grasping. Jains emphasize taking no more than is truly necessary. Followers should minimize material possessions and limit attachment to current possessions. Wealth and possessions should be shared and donated wherever possible. Jains believe that unchecked possessions can lead to direct harm to oneself and others. This includes exercising control over senses by refraining from indulgence in sexual activity. So they're pretty straight-laced characters, let me tell you. Now, the impact of Jainism is truly profound. Jains constitute a very small portion of the Indian subcontinent. There's only 4 million of them in India. And India is a country of 1.3 billion people. There's only 6 million worldwide. But their cultural influence is profound. They are largely responsible for the prevalent commitment to vegetarianism on the Indian subcontinent. There are many Buddhists who are vegetarians. There are many Hindus who are vegetarians. A lot of this goes right back to Jainism. They also, through their influence, shamed many Brahmins into thinking that animal sacrifice was just a cruel practice that should be ended. So their impact on Hinduism and Buddhism and the Indian subcontinent, for that matter, is profound. Okay, so that's Jainism. Now let's talk about the big one. Let's talk about Buddhism. And this character right here, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Now look at this image of him. Now I imagine most of you are accustomed to seeing a chubby Buddha. The Buddha that has the big belly. Kind of like the Buddha on my wall back there by the American flag. But this would be a more historically accurate depiction of Siddhartha Gautama, the emaciated Buddha, the ascetic Buddha, the Buddha that almost starved himself to death. That to me is a more fitting image. Now we're going to get into Buddhism extensively through this magical video that we're going to watch. We're not going to talk a lot about his life here, but you're going to know all about his life before this unit is over. So just suffice to say, I'm just going to give you an intro today. Okay, Siddhartha Gautama, 563 to 483 BCE. He lived roughly 500 years before Jesus. Now what's interesting about this character is he was a Kshatriya priest. And if you can remember, a Kshatriya warrior, prince, excuse me, not priest. Priests are the Brahmins. He would be the caste just below that. Now let me go back here a second. I didn't mean to go to this slide so quickly. He lived a very privileged childhood. And as the story goes, as you're going to learn in the video, he did not learn about mortality until he was in his late 20s. Now that's pretty hard to believe. But the story goes he was living this, sheltered life, went outside his palace walls one time and saw a sick person, a dying person, a poor person, and finally a corpse. And then he was like, what the heck, man? It's kind of like my story about learning about death that one day when my dog died. So, this was Siddhartha's answer. I'm going to become an ascetic. People have been lying to me. I'm living this privileged background, but I don't understand truth. So I'm going to go out and live the life of an ascetic. And he became the best ascetic. I mean, he became the best, he became the best person at denying himself. And what he found was that it gave him no answers. He also tried sensory indulgence. He had this beautiful wife, and he was crazy about her. And they engaged in all kinds of lovemaking. But again, that left him unsatisfied and wanting. There's this heart-rending portion of the video. He had a young son. He leaves his wife and his young son. And to most Westerners, we would think, oh, that guy's terrible. He's leaving his son and his wife, and he's running away. And yet there is a deeper meaning behind that, what seems to be a very selfish act. And we'll get into it big time in the video. Can't wait to talk about this subject more. And also he tried consumerism. He was a successful businessman. He had every type of material possession that you could ever hope for. And none of these things gave him the answer. Denying himself, indulging himself, purchasing everything that he could have. So finally one day, he sat underneath the Bodhi tree and waited for the answer. Now what's kind of interesting here, this is his moment of enlightenment. He's reaching out and touching the ground. You're going to see the importance of that in the video. He's going to get tempted by the devil called Mara, very similar to what Jesus went through, when he spent his time wandering through the desert. The parallels are very interesting. But this did happen 500 years before. Make sure you understand the context. Okay, I have to give you some text here, because these are the 4 noble truths of Buddhism. Very similar to the 10 Commandments, very similar to the 5 pillars of Islam. So they're more cut and dry than Hinduism. Life is suffering. Oh my gosh, I mean, think about this. Life is suffering. You might be the most successful student at Big One in high school. You might make millions of dollars in your life. You're not going to escape suffering. You are going to get old and die. You're going to look at yourself in the mirror and watch your body wither away if you are fortunate enough to live that long. Now, we don't like to think about that. I think about that more than you do at my stage in life. There are times that I look at myself in the mirror, I don't recognize myself. It's like, how in the world did I get this old? How could this be possible? There's times I look at my hands and see the wrinkles, and I'm like, that didn't look like that last year. What's going on? You might suffer from some type of physical condition, or you might have some serious injury, and you are just unable to accept the fact that your body has changed and it's deteriorated and it isn't what it once was. That's suffering right there. You're going to lose your parents if you haven't already. You might get married and lose your spouse, or go through a divorce, or whatever. This is a basic, fundamental aspect of life. Now, what Christians would refer to this as original sin. It's a big concept in Christianity, obviously. It translates into Buddhism as suffering. Now, here's what's so interesting about Buddhism. It's the concept that suffering comes from desire. And let's face it, man. Here's a classic example. It's Thanksgiving, you eat a piece of pumpkin pie, you're just like, dang, that was good. You go back and sit down, you watch some football, and you're like, man, that was a good piece of pie. I think there's another one out there. You go out and eat another piece of pie. And then you don't feel so good. As a matter of fact, you feel disgust. So that suffering that you're experiencing comes from your desire not to just be satisfied with one piece of pie, which was plenty, but this yearning to have more, which leads to great suffering. That's wonderful. Now, obviously, the solution is to curb your desire, which, good luck there. But the Buddhists, the Buddhists give you some direction. It's called the Eightfold Path. And so I have to show you the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is straightforward, easy to understand, very difficult to apply. Know the truth. Resist evil. Those are pretty like basic stuff, I got it. Take a look at number 3, say nothing to hurt others. Do any of you gossip? I have said things before about people I work with or people I know that I'm not proud of. I really try hard not to, but I have done it. And, there's times you're mad at people and you just let things slip. Or maybe you're not even mad at people. Maybe you're just someone who likes to dish on people. Don't do it. Respect life. This could be applied to a lot of circumstances. When you were a little kid, did you step on ants that weren't bothering you? I did that. I'm not proud of it. I remember one time when I was, about 10 or so, I threw a firecracker into a spider web. Watched the spider get down to get it, and it got blown to smithereens. I thought it was really kind of cool. My neighbor saw me do that and asked me what I was doing. I was ashamed of myself. It was just a wanton act of sadism and cruelty. Work for the good of others. Let's face it. When you take your clothes to the Goodwill, are they clothes that you like? A lot of times they're clothes I'm not going to wear anymore. And granted, it's a good thing that I do this, but how about going out and buying something really nice and putting that in the Goodwill box? Now, look at number 6. Pardon me, guys, I have a little cough today. Look at number 6, free minds of evil. Now, when I go to number 3 and I say I'm going to work really hard not to gossip about others, but I'll tell you what, there's times that I'm not saying something, but I'm thinking it. So this one right here, for me, is the ultimate challenge. And number 6 goes to number 7, control your thoughts. If you're someone whose mind bounces around like mine does, you need to work on that, and the way to do that, number 8, is through meditation. So that's the Eightfold Path. Very powerful directives, very easy to understand, extremely hard to do. Now, Buddhism and Hinduism are really going to come into conflict, but not like other faiths where there's this, massive amount of war between them or anything like that. That's the good news. Now, Buddhism is a lot like Hinduism. Buddhism embraces the concept of karma. Buddhism embraces the concept of dharma. Buddhism also embraces the concept of reincarnation. Here is where it is different. In Hinduism, there is no caste system. None. In Hinduism, there are no gods and goddesses. None. So that is a big difference. So a huge difference. But as far as, karma, dharma, reincarnation goes, they're the same. Now, just like it seems every faith in the world, there are these splits or schisms in Buddhism. And after Buddha's death in 500, as you're going to see, it grows. It grows primarily in East Asia. It's funny, Jesus came from what we would consider Palestine, the Roman province of Palestine. If you look at Israel today, there's very few Christians there. Then Christianity primarily moved north and west into Europe. When it comes to Buddhism, there's very few Buddhists in India today, but most of East Asia is Buddha. And it's kind of interesting. After Buddha, you see the emergence of these two concepts that are very important. One is the stupa, and the other is the bodhisattva. Now let me zoom in here on the stupa. What a stupa is, I love the eyes up here. What a stupa is, it's a mound of earth that contains relics of the Buddha. So it's a holy place inside of Buddhism. And then last, there's this concept of the bodhisattva. And the bodhisattva is just magnificent. I love this image. A bodhisattva is a person who has the option of transcending reincarnation. And like there was this concept in Hinduism called moksha. There's a similar concept in Buddhism, only it's called nirvana, like the grunge rock band from the 1990s. So nirvana and moksha mean the same thing. I should have put that in terms of similarities. Now, a character who has the option of nirvana, but chooses not to go that route, instead gets reincarnated again and stays here on earth and helps you and me evolve. That is a bodhisattva. And the best example of that would be the Dalai Lama. And we'll talk about him a lot in our videos. I love this image. The other great split that took place by the year 0 is the split between Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism. And there's just like, I guess you could call it like the Sunni Shia split or the Roman Catholic Protestant split. But here's all you need to know about this. Mahayana Buddhism is sometimes called the Great Vehicle because it contains more adherents. Embraces the images and bodhisattvas in order for a more personal experience. So this would be, I guess, similar to Protestantism. Protestantism emphasizes reading the Bible and a personal experience with God. That's Mahayana Buddhism, the Great Vehicle. I love that phrase. And then the other one's called Theravada. And Theravada is the way of the elders. Theravada Buddhism emphasizes the direct teachings of Buddha. And there's this hierarchy of monks who help you interpret things. So very similar to the Roman Catholic Church with this hierarchy of organizers and leaders and directors, Theravada Buddhism would be similar to that. And as you can see by this map, Theravada is very popular in Burma and Thailand, while in most of the rest of Asia, it's Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, people, very good. Love this topic. Buckle up.